Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Retro Horror Academy. My name is Daniel Richardson, and we're going to be looking at the year in horror 1945. Yes, we got 10 films 10 horror films from this year that we have ranked. And we're going to kick things off with 3 inductees into our Horror Hall of Fame. And these are all heavyweights. That's right. We have got a star-studded list of inductees that are just phenomenal. Let's just get to it. I'm excited about this one because, like, seriously, there's not one underwhelming name on this list. All perfect. So, our first inductee into the Horror Hall of Fame, Boris Karloff. That is right. The British actor, sometimes known as Karloff the Uncanny. Clearly what made him a horror icon was playing Frankenstein's monster. Something that he would do 3 times. He also played the Mummy, the first, incarnation of that. Of course, this guy was a major actor well before this. I mean, he wasn't recognized, but he was still a good actor. Like, he was doing movies all the time. And then when we played Frankenstein's monster, put him right there on the map. And not only is he a great actor, he's also a very accomplished stage actor at this point, too. So, the guy is truly just the total package. Here's the thing. It's funny because, just as an example, fellow Hall of Famer, Lon Chaney, I only knew Lon Chaney from one movie, and that was Phantom of the Opera. And he was great in that. I loved him in that movie. I didn't know much about Lon Chaney until I started doing this show. When I joined the Retro Horror Academy and started watching, all his previous work, I, gained a huge appreciation for Lon Chaney. With Boris Karloff, however, well before I even joined the Retro Horror Academy, I was already a huge fan. I have watched a ton of his films previous. And I've seen a lot more now, but even before this, I always thought he was a great actor. Not just a horror actor, a great actor. You want any proof of this? Search for the TV series. It was like a failed TV series. I don't think they only were 8 episodes, but they turned into a movie as well. But either way, The Veil. He plays a different character in every movie or every episode, and he does it exquisitely. Like, he's brilliant. And so, yeah, anyways, Boris fucking Karloff, hands down. And again, I mean, he's, we're looking at this from the perspective of 1945. The guy is he's in the middle of a huge run right now, and he's already a Hall of Famer. He's already a Hall of Famer. And I'm proud to have him in the Hall of Fame. Some movies you may know him from: Behind the Mask, You'll Find Out, King of the Wild. But let's talk about the movies that we have covered on this show, because it is quite an extensive list. Let's just get started. We got The Bells, Frankenstein, The Mummy, The Old Dark House, The Mask of Fu Manchu, The Ghoul, The Black Cat, Bride of Frankenstein, The Invisible Ray, The Raven, The Black Room, The Walking Dead, The Man Who Lived Again, Son of Frankenstein, The Man They Could Not Hang, Black Friday, The Ape, The Man with 9 Lives, Before I Hang, The Devil Commands, The Boogeyman Will Get You, House of Frankenstein, and The Climax. My God. The body of work alone that this guy has contributed to the world of horror. Boris Karloff. So, congratulations, Mr. Karloff. Come on in, take your seat among the greats. You have fucking earned it. And I feel like, number 2, you just can't say, these people are, these two are so intertwined that you can't say one without the other. And so it's no surprise that our number 2 inductee into the Horror Hall of Fame is Bela Lugosi. That's right, a Hungarian actor. What made him the horror icon, obviously, was playing Dracula. But he also did a great job as Igor as well. He was before the world of horror, he was a, great, respected stage actor, a silent film star. In fact, it was the stage performance of Dracula that got him the role in the movie. Unfortunately, since everybody knew him just as Dracula, and the fact that he had this really thick Hungarian accent, he was pretty much typecast for horror from there on out. That was it. As I mentioned before, his career has been intertwined with Boris Karloff the entire way, and they frequently team together, turning out some fantastic films along the way. And even though this dude is pigeonholed as a horror actor, he was still a draw. Like even in movies where like maybe he was only in a couple scenes or not even like a side character, but like a very small supporting character, he was still usually given close to top billing, if not top billing sometimes. So it's like, yeah, his name was still like if you're into horror, you were watching Bela Lugosi films because Bela Lugosi. Much like Karloff, I saw a lot of his movies before, not as much as Karloff, but I will say, with the exception of a couple, I wasn't nearly as big on Bela Lugosi until I started the Retro Horror Academy, and then when I started watching all these films together, films like The Invisible Ray, his performance in The Raven, The Black Cat. He's brilliant. Like he really is a great actor as well. I do think that his accent does probably hold him back a little bit, but honestly, you can't say he's not trying. Like I've yet to see a movie where it feels like he's sleepwalking. Now I know we're going to be getting into the later 40s and the 50s, and we'll probably get to a few movies that maybe he is just kind of phoning it in. But as of right now, no, he has earned, more than earned, his spot in the Horror Hall of Fame. Films like The Last Performance, The Picture of Dorian Gray, Shadow of Chinatown, and The Body Snatcher. But let's go through the list of the movies that we've covered on this show. Gotta take another inhale here. Let me get a quick drink before we cover this bad boy. All right, we got Dracula, Island of Lost Souls, White Zombie, Murders in the Rue Morgue, Night of Terror, The Black Cat, The Invisible Ray, Mark of the Vampire, The Raven, Son of Frankenstein, The Human Monster, The Gorilla, Black Friday, The Devil Bat, The Wolfman, Invisible Ghost, Spooks Run Wild, The Ghost of Frankenstein, Night Monster, The Corpse Vanishes, Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, The Return of the Vampire, The Ape Man, and Return of the Ape Man. Again, much like Karloff, he has contributed so much to the world of horror that, yeah, his spot is undeniable. So, Mr. Lugosi, thank you for everything you've done. Come on into the Horror Hall of Fame and take your seat among the greats. And the third person, again, without him, we may not even have a Bela Lugosi. I am talking about Bram Stoker. Sorry, Stoker. I always want to say Stroker. I'm a pervert, I guess. Sorry. Bram Stoker. Irish author. Obviously best known for writing Dracula. Didn't know this. He's actually a theater critic as well. But unfortunately for Mr. Stoker, he didn't become famous until after his death because, after he died, Dracula would continue to grow. I think he had some success while he was still alive with Dracula, but it was really after his death that people started really, picking it up. It became his, magnum opus, So, yeah, I mean, again, this dude is the father of vampire. I know there's like another vampire book out there, but come on, let's be real. When you're thinking of vampire, the original OG, you're thinking about Dracula. That's all there is to it. The only movie I think we haven't covered that maybe he'd done was a movie called Dracula's Death. But up until this point, the movies we've covered that Bram was a part of, Nosferatu, both versions of Dracula, the original and, of course, the Spanish version, and, of course, Dracula's Daughter. Again, I mean, he, much like, we've had a handful of writers who really only contributed maybe one book. But that one book's always great. Whether it's Robert Louis Stevenson for Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, or Mary Shelley with Frankenstein, Bram Stoker just did Dracula, and that's all he needs to do. He gave birth to a whole new genre at this point. So Bram Stoker, come on into the Horror Hall of Fame, buddy. Take a seat. You've earned it. All right, guys. So we got that out of the way. Let's get into our top 10, shall we? Of 1945. So, coming in at number 10 of 1945 horror films, we have The Man in Half Moon Street. So basically, you got this scientist who has found a way to basically prolong his life. And of course, he hasn't aged in many years, decades even. However, he has to have, new glands to keep this procedure going, to keep him alive. Because if he don't get these new glands, he will die. And he just, of course, met the girl of his dreams. And he has fallen in love. The plot's very similar to The Picture of Dorian Gray. However, it's based on its own original play, stage play. So, again, I'm not sure which came first, if one did borrow from the other or whatever, but obviously, Picture of Dorian Gray is a little bit more famous than The Man in Half Moon Street. So, I guess we'll, go with Dorian Gray on that one. This film was actually filmed, or sorry, this movie was filmed in 1943. Was held back for about a year. It did get a small screening and a couple screenings in 1944, but it didn't get its major release until 45. So I like this movie. Again, or not again, sorry. I'd never actually seen The Picture of Dorian Gray. I'm very familiar with the story. I knew everything about it, but just one of those books I never read, and I'd never seen a single movie adaptation of it. But I knew enough of it. Like, I've heard a lot of people talk about it, whatever. And so even before I found out this was kind of like a similar plot to that, I instantly was just like, this is a lot like The Picture of Dorian. Like, I actually thought maybe it was a ripoff initially when I started watching it. Of course, it's different because this is science as opposed to like some kind of weird magical painting or whatever. But I like this. Again, there's no surprises here. You pretty much go beat by beat. You know where this movie's going. But I don't know. Overall, I gave it a thumbs up. I liked it. IMDb has given this a 6. Or has a 6 rating on IMDb, and I'll agree with that. I concur. That seems about right for this movie. So yeah, that's The Man in Half Moon Street. At number 9, we have Fog Island. So basically, this guy just recently gets out of prison, and he decides to invite all of his former business associates, I'm using quotations here, you can't see, to basically come and visit his new home, or his home on Fog Island, which gets its name because, you guessed it, it's shrouded in fog. And of course, this guy's got revenge on his mind. This film stars, horror heavyweights George Zucco and Lionel Atwill. It's based on a play called Angel Island, but it's also been called like a low-budget 10 Little Indians, which is the Agatha Christie story. It kind of comes off like that. Again, I like this movie. I really like this movie. I love the revenge, trying to pick them off one by one, but doing it like in this elaborate setup. It reminded me a lot of The Invisible Ray, or years later when it was done in The Abominable Dr. Phibes. Seeing Zuko and Atwill on screen together is always fun. They're both great in this. Again, just a really good story. I don't know. I enjoyed this movie. Definitely deserves more than be 9, but again, I'm a part of a group, a collective, and together we, pull our votes together. So it's number 9. This has been given a 5.3 on IMDb. That seems very low to me, but hey, what do I know? Fog Island, I say check it out. So we're going to move on now to number 8, a film called Zombies on Broadway. So basically, you got these 2 press agents who work for this mobster. He's a former mobster, sorry. And he's got a new nightclub opening up. And they kind of advertise they're going to have this zombie. And they kind of, I guess are contractually obligated to provide a zombie. We're talking like a voodoo zombie, not a flesh eater. That hasn't been invented yet. But they were told they're going to, present this zombie. And if they don't, well, there'll be some hell to pay. So the 2 lead actors in this movie, a guy named Alan Carney and Wally Brown, and apparently they were RKO's version of Abbott and Costello. I didn't pick that up when I was watching this. And you've seen that in the past, with the Rich brothers clearly trying to be like the Marx brothers and failed miserably. You had that duo that, this is of course a little bit later on in the timeline, but in the 50s, there was Bela Lugosi meets the Brooklyn Gorilla, and the duo that did that movie was clearly, like, without a shadow of doubt, ripping off Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. And so, but here, I didn't pick up, I don't know, maybe if I rewatched it again, maybe I would, maybe see a little bit clearer, but along with my first viewing went, I didn't get any Abbott Costello vibes from these guys, but again, I wasn't looking for it, and it wasn't that obvious if it is. But anyways, so yeah, they got RKO's knockoff of Abbott Costello's movie. It also stars Bela Lugosi, our recent Hall of Famer. So Bela Lugosi's in this. We also this location of this movie takes place on San Sebastian, the island. This was also the location for the movies I Walked with a Zombie and The Ghost Story, which or sorry, The Ghost Ship, which were both produced by Val Lewton and made there at RKO. So I thought that's kind of neat. I don't know if they supposed to share the same continuity or whatever, or exist in the same universe, but I don't know. So that's kind of neat. This movie actually was a bit of a success for him, and they would actually take the cast, the boys and Lugosi and them, and they would make the movie Genius at Work. However, even though it made some money, or what was good for RKO, this movie got bad reviews. Like it didn't play well with audiences. Sir Lancelot and Darby Jones, who both played in High Walk with a Zombie, pretty much played the exact characters in this movie as well, which I thought was kind of humorous there. And then the final little piece of trivia here, turns out that the jungle scenes were actually filmed on the set of Tarzan. So there you go, for you Tarzan fans. There's your moment there. Take a drink. Sorry. We're not sponsored by them, but I'm drinking the crap out of this Dr. Pepper creamy coconut. Crack open another one. So anyways, I like this movie. It was funny. Not hilarious, but it was entertaining. It passed the time. I enjoyed it. I thought the plot was fun. Dug it all the way through. I mean, all the way up to the ending. I just thought it was just, fun all around. Watching these two guys kind of bumbling around, on this plantation looking for, zombies or whatever. I don't know. It's just good stuff. Again, it got like a 5.2 on IMDb. That's a little unfair to me. I don't know. But hey, it is what it is. But yeah, Zombies on Broadway is our number 8 film. So that brings us now to number 7. And of course, I'm talking about a movie called The Vampire's Ghost. So basically, we're in this small African village, and there's a bar. And the bartender, the guy who runs this entire place, he's actually a vampire. But he's a bit cynical. And, it is what it is. This movie itself, I guess the production was a mess. They went 2 days over schedule. A cameraman was actually fired for talking. I guess he was talking while they were shooting, which I'm like, that should just be obvious you don't do that. But apparently he did. However, this was a success at the box office. Or at least, for them, Republic. Sorry, I should have mentioned the studio. For Republic. And actually not just that, another movie that we aren't covering on here, spoiler alert, it's called The Phantom Speaks. It also did well. And so with the success of both The Phantom Speaks and The Vampire's Ghost, it would actually pretty much persuade Republic to stay in the horror genre a little bit longer, and they would actually do Valley of the Zombies and The Catman of Paris the very next year. So, this movie's all right. Kind of, they didn't blend it as much as I was hoping they would, but kind of having this voodoo backdrop with vampires, I thought that was kind of cool, but they don't really go anywhere with it, so it don't really matter or mean anything. I don't know. This movie, ultimately, it's going to be forgettable. I feel like this is going to be a movie that, once we get into the 50s and maybe even the 60s, I'll look back at this and be like, what's The Vampire's Ghost about again? And I have to actually recognize, there's nothing that really stands out about this movie. It's got a 5.9 on IMDb, which I think is a little unfair. Zombies on Broadway, they got a 5.2, and this thing is a 5.9. But, again, that's just me and the general public disagreeing like we always do. So we're moving on now to number 6. And if I'm being honest with you guys, probably my movie of 1945. A horror film of 1945. And probably a movie, too. I don't know what else came out that year. I've only been watching horror films from this era, so yeah, it's probably my movie total of 1945. This movie is called Isle of the Dead. So, it's during the war, and these people are kind of put on this island, and they end up getting quarantined. It's a Greek island off the coast of Greece. Anyways, but they're on this island because there's been an outbreak of the plague, and so they're trying to quarantine all these people on this island. It's just a small group on this little island in one house, and so what happens is it's already bad enough that they're kind of stuck together. They're starting to wear on each other's nerves a little bit. But you got this one, she's like the cook or the maid or whatever, and she's very superstitious, and she believes that this other young girl that's in the group She's some kind of weird demon, is what she believes. And so again, it's all kind of it's a boiler, kind of boiling up, to a pressure here. I could have worded that better. I know I could have. Anyways, moving on. So this was produced by Val Lewton. And of course, he had his regular team. He had Mark Robson and Adele Ray. Ardell Ray. Robson, of course, he was an editor for him for the longest time on other films, and he stepped into a directing role here. And then Ray was she always did a lot of the writing for him. So he's got his team assembled here, and of course now we got other Hall of Famer Boris Karloff as the star here. So this is it's such an odd thing. This movie is based on a painting. Yeah. Like the other movies he did like one that was based on like a newspaper article, which isn't uncommon now. There's been several movies now, in this day and age that's been based on just articles or whatever. But back then, it was just kind of weird. It's like, didn't come up with your own original plan, didn't get a play or, a previous movie or a book. He's like, nope, looking at the painting here, and that's where I'm getting my inspiration. I did a whole movie based on this one painting right here. Yeah, must have been some painting. Anyways, the production was actually held up early on because right before they actually started shooting, Boris Karloff had to get a back surgery. And so, he was down getting a surgery. Well, when he recovered, the crew hasn't even shown up to do this movie yet. So they kind of churned out this quickie called The Body Snatcher. And I was like, man, it's very Roger Corman of you there, getting a quick little movie out, before you start your main, event here. And, of course, most notably when Corman would do The Raven, they had like everything there for the weekend afterwards, and they shot The Terror, immediately after that. And so it's just like, yeah, Body Snatcher. I'm digging it. I'm digging it. Anyways, the score for this movie was actually inspired by a poem. But get this, that poem was inspired by the same painting that inspired this movie. Man, if you're worried about this painting, by the way, it's the painting that's in the opening credits of this film. So there you go. That painting, my God, spawned a lot of stuff. Wasn't for that painting, we may not even have a movie. This thing got good reviews when it came out. In fact, years later, Martin Scorsese would put it on his list of the 11 scariest horror films of all time. The demon that they talk about, and I'm going to butcher this thing. They said it a couple times in the movie, but honestly, she talked with such an accent, I didn't quite get it. Vorvolocus? Volocus? I don't know. The demon that she's accusing him of, or of the girl being, this thing actually is from like a Greek mythology or a local legend or whatever, and it's very closely related or resembling vampires, with the exception of it doesn't drink your blood or anything like that. But kind of the same thing. It drains you of your life force and can make you do bad things or whatever. So, however, regardless of the good reviews and everything, all the praise this movie gets, this thing barely broke even at the box office. So, was not the success they were hoping for. I absolutely love this movie. I love any confined film. I like movies, and not necessarily confined. Like, I don't know, I do hate movies that take place like in one setting or in like one apartment that's due to like low budget. Like, that bugs me. But when you're trapped, that's a different beast for me. Whether if you're in a house, a farmhouse, and you're surrounded by zombies, or if you're, on a plane and there's snakes on the other side, or whatever the case may be, I love confined horror, trapped horror, whatever you want to call it. And so here they're all trapped on here because they could have the plague and they're stuck. And now you got this woman who is accusing someone else of being this it's demon essentially, and her crazy is spreading because now other people are starting to be like, oh, wait a minute, could she be a demon? And I love that. Like, I don't know, just to me very reminiscent of like in The Mist, when crazy church lady starts spouting her nonsense and pretty much develops her own cult, her own church cult in a supermarket. And you can see how ugly that can turn. You're getting in this movie as well. And I thought that was, really cool. Very well done. Of course, we mentioned earlier, Boris Karloff does a great job. The supporting cast does as well, but, Boris Karloff is definitely the standout in this movie. This thing got a 6.5 on IMDb, which really, I'm like, really? Everything else be getting, like, low scores when I like it. This movie should be getting a lot higher. It does have a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, though, and it did make around 400,000 at the box office. So, yeah, Isle of the Dead, damn good movie. Definitely check it out. Put it on your list. I recommend Isle of the Dead. So, we're now moving on to number 5, a movie called Jungle Captive. So, the ape woman, Paula, or Chila, whatever you want to call her, she's resurrected by this, mad scientist with his brutish, probably mentally handicapped assistant, and of course they bring her back, from the dead. She died in the last film. However, they gotta have blood to pump through her. They gotta get a fresh female blood donor, so they of course kidnap his female lab assistant as well. However, when they resurrect Opala, she's got she's got some brain damage from the last film, so she's pretty much just kind of like a weird walking zombie in this movie. This is the third part in the Chila or Paula Ape Woman trilogy. We covered the first one, Captive Wild Woman, in the 1943 episode. However, we did not, it didn't make the list last time. In the 1944, the second film was The Jungle Woman, and just did not make the list. And so, but yeah, this is the third part right here. Vicky Lane would actually replace Aquanetta. I don't know why Aquanetta was out and why brought her in. And when you kind of get to the, and I'll get that later. I guess I'll come back to that. This movie also stars Rondo Hatton. Rondo Hatton. He's going to start becoming a force in the world of horror. Not on the level of his predecessors, but he's definitely going to be headlining some horror films coming up. So cool to see him in this movie early on. This thing got really bad reviews when it came out. In fact, Joe Dante put it on his list of worst horror films ever made. Which is sad because this is actually Vicky Lane's last movie. Not because she died or anything like that, but she's retired after this. So it's like, yeah, that's the last movie you went out on was Jungle Captive, huh? I don't know. This movie was just okay. Again, mad science, ape woman. We've seen it before. That was okay. This one didn't do any better, I didn't think. I think the first one was better. I didn't see the second one. I've never seen Jungle Woman. We didn't get voted in, so I didn't have to watch it or anything. So, but anyways, yeah, I don't know what else to say about this movie. I thought it was very weird. Like I was saying earlier, they replaced Aquanetta with Vicky Lane, but you don't get a lot of like ape woman in this movie. Like they resurrect the woman, and whatever, but it's like that never becomes a factor. The fact that she's an ape woman, you could have literally just had any woman, dead woman, just being resurrected. And you could have had the same exact movie. So you could have had a standalone movie without. But I don't know. Maybe they thought Paula. I'm not sure what the box office grosses was on those first two. They had to be pretty good, I guess, and they're making sequels. So it's like I don't know. It just seems kind of weird. Like you lost Aquanetta. Just cut your losses and just make this a mad science brings a dead girl back from the dead movie, and we'll just go from there. But yeah, it is what it is. It got a 5.1 on IMDb, and that feels right. I'll agree with IMDb on that one. So we're moving on now to number 4. Movie called Dead of Night. So we got all these guests coming out to this house out in the country, and they're going to spend the whole weekend there. And anyways, the main guy, when he gets out there, he has this very uneasy feeling, and he starts talking about how he had this nightmare. He doesn't remember much of the nightmare, but he does know like it's just something bad's going to happen. And so as he's telling them this story, everybody's kind of compelled to tell their own brushes with the supernatural or unexplained whatever, and it turns out that's basically it. This is a British film, and it's also a horror anthology. It's kind of a rarity at this point because actually during World War II, the UK put a ban on horror films being made. So how this one kind of slipped by, I don't know. Maybe it was slightly post-war, I don't know. But either way, yeah, it got made regardless. This thing was considered very highly influential, especially that ventriloquist dummy segment. It performed great at the box office, got great reviews, with everybody pretty much saying that the dummy segment was the best segment of the movie. It also, not only was that segment itself very influential, but the idea of, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, skip ahead a few minutes, I guess, but the movie, when it gets to the end, it loops back to the beginning of the film. First time, you ever seen something like that. And that, of course, that blew people's minds back then. And, that also has influenced, movies to do kind of the same kind of thing later on down the road. Time Out Magazine actually ranked their top 100 horror films. They had a lot of horror insiders and the different editors and whatnot get together to construct this list, and this movie was like number 35 on their list. So that's pretty crazy. Martin Scorsese also placed this at number 5 on his top 11 scariest horror films of all time. It would also inspire the Batman villains Scarface and a ventriloquist. Several of the segments in this movie would be remade multiple times by the Twilight Zone. That would come out, a few years later. And then thought it was kind of interesting. The original U.S. cut of this movie actually took 2 segments out. They took out the Christmas party and the golfing story. However, they felt like it was too long, which is crazy because this movie isn't that long. It's only like an hour and 17 minutes, but they took it out anyways, shortened it for length or whatever. However, shortly after that, they reinstall it, so every version that came out past that, or every cut that came out in the U.S. after that, would have everything re-intact. So, also, the looping of this movie with, the ending becoming the beginning of the film again, actually inspired the steady state theory, which I guess is a theory where, a lot of scientists believe that the Big Bang started the world, and at some point, it will, existence will cease to exist, and, it'll come to an end. Whereas the steady state theory, I guess, is the idea that we're on this continuous loop, that the world never ends, and we get to the end, it just goes back to the beginning, and we just keep reliving existence throughout, I don't know much beyond that. I just read that, but thought that was very interesting. Also, the story about the murdered boy in the segment, the Christmas party, that's actually based on a true story. Like, how fucking crazy is that? Not the ghost part, but the child being murdered by his sister. Yeah. Very, very happy over there in the UK. Take it, Dirk. Oh, cheerio. And the final little thing I thought was kind of interesting was this studio, even though this movie was a success, and, not just financially, but critically, this would be the only horror film that studio would crank out. And I don't remember, I didn't write it down, I don't know what studio it's called. But anyways, they just focus on comedies from here on out. And I'm like, that is so weird. Like, I don't know. Here in America, you get a little iota of success, and you just jump on that thing and milk it until it's just despised and doesn't do shit, and you move on to something else. But over there, they're like, this is great. Let's do something else completely different. No idea. Okay, so for me personally, I did like this movie. My only complaints, again, I thought that, the ventriloquist thing I've seen so many times. I've seen, not just Twilight Zone, but I thought there was another movie that did that. Maybe another show as well. Like, I don't know. I feel like it's been done to death at this point. So, like, I saw this, I liked it, but at the same time, I already knew what it was, the plot of it and everything. A lot of segments I liked. The Harbinger, the guy who can predict the death coming up and ends up sending the guys likely don't get on the bus. I thought that was, really cool, well done. Christmas Party was good. The only story that I did not, and I love the wraparound. Yeah, I thought the loop was brilliant. I was like, holy shit, that's awesome. The only thing I didn't care for was, or the 2 things. One, I felt like it felt longer than it was, and that may have been why I got cut. They cut 2 segments out. They cut 1 segment out. That was right. I'll get to that in a second. But it's only an hour and 17 minutes, but it felt so much longer. And I think is really mostly because of the ventriloquist story. For me, whenever that came up, like I said, I've already seen versions of this. So even as I'm watching, I'm like, did I ever see this one? And it's like, I haven't seen this, but I've seen this done before. And it's a little unfair because this was the first one. So it shouldn't get that kind of backlash, but it did. For me, just for me personally. Because I'm just like, yeah, I've already seen this. Still a great segment, still well done, but like I said, as I'm watching it, I'm just kind of like, all right, can we go to the next segment, please? And I felt like that was the other thing. A lot of the segments kept getting longer and longer, and I'm like, oh, just get to the... Because, I was more about the wraparound story. I didn't give a shit about these people and their little brushes with the supernatural, especially when the stories just kept getting longer. But the one story I truly hated was the golf story, because tonally, it's comedy. And it shifts so drastically. You're like, what the fuck? And, it makes sense within the story, I guess, because you find out that this story is actually just being made up by the guy who's telling it just to kind of, like, lighten the mood. So he's telling a false narrative. But it's like, that's still a part of the movie, and it's tonally weird. I don't know. And apparently that's a team that, like, they've done other movies before, usually revolving around sports, and they do like their own comedy routine or whatever. So I guess in the UK, people knew these guys, and it's like, oh yeah, another great version of this. But me personally, I don't know. I couldn't get into it. So yeah, I wasn't big on that. But take that out of the equation. Still a very solid movie. And again, I mean, it gets points for just being as influential as it was. So yeah, there you have it. Number 4, we're talking about Dead of Night. So now we're getting to the top 3, guys. We're getting to the award winners here. We're going to start off with number 3, the Bronze Skull Award winner goes to Strangler of the Swamp. So basically what we got here is we're on this little island in this swampy area. And basically all these men kill this guy. They think he's guilty of a crime. And they innocently kill this man. They hang him. And what happens is now somebody's knocking these guys off and their descendants. They're seems to be male descendants, even though, yeah, I think it's just male descendants. But anyways, someone's knocking him off, and of course now people are believing that the ghost of the strangler, or sorry, the swamp strangler is actually the ghost of this innocent man who died, long ago, coming back for revenge. And so one of the men who was murdered by this entity or person was the ferryman. And so the ferryman's granddaughter shows up, and she ends up taking over the role of the ferryman and gets the job done. Meanwhile, I don't know if this guy was like the sheriff or the mayor of the island, but one of the pillars of the community, the main guy who was also involved with murdering, this guy, his son is also back on the island. He just got back from college. And so him and the granddaughter of the ferryman are now seeing each other. They fall in love, romantically linked. However, when it seems like the strangler is going to go after the son, the new ferryman, she's trying to, save his life. So she decides, what, she will sacrifice herself to save his life. So this is actually a remake of the German film. Let's see if I can get this right. Fallman Maria. We actually covered it on this show. But oddly enough, it's done by the same director. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Like, the guy came over here to America and then remade his movie over there. It got decent reviews. In fact, this is actually considered one of the better films for PRC. So, there you go. I remember I did like Fahaman Maria. I think it's German for Ferryman Maria. But for whatever reason, I keep saying the original German title. Anyways, I remember liking it. But at the same time, it was just kind of in the middle movie for me. I do like that they kind of, they changed location, so we're no longer over here in whatever European country. I guess off the coast of Germany. Like, Germany's landlocked, isn't it? Yeah. So I don't know where the fuck the island was. Maybe it was an island in there, like a landlocked island. You get that sometimes, like in the middle of a lake or something like that. Anyways, regardless, I like to change location to the bayou, this swampy Louisiana area. So I thought that was kind of cool. Also, this brings in a very slasher element. We're not really seeing a lot of these murders take place. They're happening off screen for the most part. We're seeing him stalk them, and we're seeing these people drop one by one. So I really like that aspect. However, just in the end, there's nothing really special about this movie. I kind of felt like the ending was kind of cheap. The whole because we've seen that happen before in other films where, true love kind of stops death from trying to reclaim, or he does accept, okay, I'll take your life for his. And here the strangler's just like, all right, you're willing to spare your life, then I'll let you both go. And it's like, really, you're gonna get this cheap happy ending? I don't know. I just feel like the strangler shouldn't fall for that shit. Or at the very least, just don't go after descendants. I always hated that in movies where they're like, for the sins of the fathers, we'll go after your descendants. I was like, they didn't do shit. What the fuck? And so if you are innocent, now I'm rooting against you because, well, now you're evil. You went from, if you're getting your revenge, kill the people of that time. Ghost those fuckers. Curse them. Don't go after, the great-great-great-grandchildren. Fuck you, Fog. I hate The Fog. I know that's a horror classic and everybody sucks that movie off and they're like, it's a John Carpenter classic. I love John Carpenter. I love most of his movies, but I fucking hate The Fog. And that's one of the reasons I hate that movie. Just, I hate that concept. I'll curse your descendants. Yeah, you're a dick. Anyway, so yeah, but this movie, just like I said, it's not bad. But much like its original, the predecessor, it just kind of falls in the middle for me. This does have a 6.1 on IMDb, so I don't know if I'd go that high, but it ain't far from what I'd say. I'd probably give it a 5.5 or maybe even a 5.9. So yeah, I guess 6.1's close ish. So yeah, anyways, that's the Bronze Skull Award winner, Strangler of the Swamp. So we move on to number two. This is the winner of the Silver Skull Award, and I am talking about the film The Picture of Dorian Gray. So basically, you got this young guy who seems like he never ages. He's forever young. However, this dude does a lot of bad shit. And that bad shit is reflected in this painting of him, where everything that he seems to do, it draws out the ugliness, the inner ugliness, and just all the sins that he's been committing. It comes out in this painting. So this is based on the novel by Oscar Wilde. Interesting thing about this movie is that the film, it's shot in black and white, but whenever you get close-ups of the portrait, they actually shot that in color. So it does, it's boom, it's very vibrant. You're like, oh, it's very, it's almost, I wouldn't say jarring, but it does kind of break you out. You're like, oh shit, wait a minute, that's in color, wow. And so I thought that was kind of cool. One of the big changes from the book to the movie was that, in the movie at the end when he does his one good deed, it doesn't alter the painting that much, but he notes that when he looks in the eyes of himself, the self-portrait, he can see a gleam of hope that gives him hope. That, there's some goodness still in this guy. And that's enough to, make him decide, like, I'm going to be good from now on and, I'll destroy this painting or whatever. In the book, however, when he does his one good deed, it actually makes the painting worse. It makes it uglier. Because the painting almost knows, like, you're only doing the good deed to get yourself out of being this hideous, ugly monster or whatever. And I thought I like that better, actually. I kind of wish they would have kept that there. But I guess, in the movie, especially, during this era, the Hays Code era, we try and find the good in everybody. So, if he's going to, he's going to die anyway, but let's make sure, like, well, he was on the right path before we kill him. Instead of just being like, nope, dude, you too far gone. Fuck it. This movie, actually, it was nominated for 3 Oscars total, and it actually won one for best black and white cinematography. So awesome there. And Angela Lansbury, that's right, Murder She Wrote herself. She won a Golden Globe for best supporting actress for her role. I read that Basil Rathbone, who's no stranger to the world of horror, he actually tried, like, in vain. I guess he was, like, lobbying big time to play Lord Henry in this movie. However, it's believed that since at that point he was being typecast pretty much for just being Sherlock Holmes, and I think he was on loan from the studio. Like, they put him on loan with their studio altogether, so he was making a movie for someone else altogether. And actually, it may have been a Sherlock Holmes movie. He did not get the role, and he was always pretty upset and disappointed about that. This movie would actually be a pretty modest box office success, so, good for that. The guy who would wind up playing Dorian Gray, actor named Hurd Hatfield, him and Angela Lansbury would actually form a lifelong friendship on the set of this movie. He would actually introduce her to her future husband later on, and she would get him a guest role on several episodes of Murder, She Wrote. So, kind of cool to hear that, even after all those years, they still remain really good friends. And finally, Sir Cedric Hardwicke, he was actually the narrator of this movie, but he was uncredited for some reason. So here's the thing. Again, like I mentioned with the very first movie we covered, that like this movie, never seen a version of The Picture of Dorian Gray, but I knew everything about it going into it. So I don't know. It did kind of feel like a boring watch for me, and it does start off so slow. It does pick up, and again, it's not bad, but this movie, where I said like the last film we were talking about, that was like an hour and 17 minutes, felt long to me. This movie was an hour and 50 minutes, and you felt every minute. They could have trimmed this thing down quite a bit. And honestly, they probably should have. So yeah, it was very much just like, I don't know, it was kind of a slog to get through at times. Well acted. In fact, George Sanders, who played Lord Henry, stole the show. I have never read anything from Oscar Wilde. But I always heard about that wit, that Oscar Wilde wit, and I've seen people do parodies, and I guess I've seen clips here and there of other things that he's done, or I guess people doing monologues from his books or whatever. But you could tell that Lord Henry is like Oscar Wilde, like that's literally just him being that guy, and it was like everything this guy said was just spot on, hilarious. Like I loved it. I don't know, he had that wit, that razor sharp kind of comebacks for everything, just always seems pessimistic but happy in his pessimism. Like I don't know, I dug it. I thought it was very funny. But like I said, the movie itself, and again, I love the painting aspect of it. Like I said, I love the story. Like I said, the story is a great story, great concept. But like I said, just at this point, I knew about it already, so nothing was surprising me in this. And so I don't know. With that said, it's still getting a thumbs up for me. I like it. I'm sure. I have a feeling this will probably be the best version of this, unless we just go like hard R. Like if I start seeing titties and blood later on in the other movies that adapt this, I may go into that version and be like, yeah, that's better. But I'm sure like a straight adaptation, this is probably the best version of it. So yeah, it is what it is. It got 7.5 on IMDb currently, 93% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it scored a cool $3 million at the box office. So there you have it, our Silver Skull Award, The Picture of Dorian Gray. So that leaves us with just one film now. The winner of the Golden Skull Award and the top horror film of 1945, House of Dracula. So the Wolfman and Dracula begged this mad scientist. I always call them mad scientists. They don't start out mad, but they always turn mad. They go to the scientists and they're trying to get a cure for their lycanthropy. I can never say that word right. It's like one of those words I just can never say. Lythro. His werewolfism, and the vampirism. They're trying to get cures for each individual element. However, you are dealing with a werewolf and a vampire, and Dracula is macking big time on the hunchback assistant. So like he's one getting some of that nurse booty. So yeah, got a little bit of conflict of interest coming into this thing. So this film follows House of Frankenstein. Originally, even before House of Frankenstein, it was supposed to be Wolfman versus Dracula. That was a script, and it was going to have Bela Lugosi come back as Dracula. However, when Boris Karloff came back, and they were entering negotiations for him to come back as in the film, which would become House of Frankenstein, as the mad scientist or whatever. That kind of pushed this script back. And then when they, after they did that and wanted to do a follow up, they were brought back, Wolfman versus Dracula. However, it was the censorship board that kind of stepped in and requested this movie be, put back on the back burner yet again, and so production was stopped once more. However, after that, it would be rewritten, but this time, instead of just have Wolfman versus Dracula, they would include the Frankenstein monster as well, and of course, we get what we get now with House of Dracula. John Carradine, Glenn Strange, and Lon Chaney Jr., they all play the three main monsters in this thing. They all come back here. This movie got horrible reviews when it came out. And of course, it was around this point that the studio was kind of getting over doing horror films. What we're getting at this point is, World War II coming to an end. You got soldiers coming back, and they've gone through real life horror. People who maybe didn't even see the war had loved ones go off and die, or come back not quite the same, or injured, or whatever. So at this point, there's a lot of real horror out there, and so no one's wanting to go see these, atrocities on camera. Even though these aren't nearly as scary or diabolical or whatever, people are still kind of like, no. And apparently, I guess we saw an uptick in, or at least the studio was putting out more musicals and light fantasies. So that was kind of the thing there. Bela Lugosi was said to have been busy during production of this movie, but that's been disputed. And a lot of people said that when they did the research, it didn't quite line up that he was actually free, and it may just be another example of Universal kind of dicking him around, which is very sad. I don't get why he kept getting the short end of the stick. He must have really pissed someone off in those early days when he was Dracula, because it seems like they're constantly fucking him around. But anyway, so yeah, that's that's why they continue to have John Carradine play Dracula, because he played him also in House of Frankenstein. This was so Lionel Atwill, including this film, has been in 5 different versions of the Frankenstein films, right? He always plays a different character each time, but he played all 5 of them. Unfortunately, this will be his last movie because shortly after this movie, he actually died of after shooting the film of lung cancer. So really sad to see. Lionel, I didn't realize. I was following along with this almost like in real time. I didn't know when people died or whatever. Some of them had a good idea, but some of these guys I'm just discovering for the first time, like Lionel Atwill, had no idea he died this year. That sucks. So R.I.P. Mr. Atwill. So yeah, this was his last film right here. So they had a lot of the crew from previous Universal horror films, transferred to this movie. Executive producers, the writer, the director, cinematographer, like a lot of the same cast and crew. So at this point, it's been said that Universal, it was almost like they were cranking these out in the style of like how TV shows were being cranked out later on. It's assembly line production, just bam, film it, go, boom, 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 pumping them out. And so yeah, that's what we're getting, in the case here. A little funny anecdote here. There's a scene where Glenn Strange, playing the monster, he's coming out of the quicksand, right? So he had to film all day inside this quicksand. And he started getting cold. And so he was complaining about it. And Lon Chaney decided to hook him up with some alcohol. And so I guess in between takes, this dude's just pounding his alcohol. And didn't quite know it hit him until he tried to get out of that quicksand. And I guess he was tore up. And he basically knocked him for a loop, and he was done for the day. Lon passing off his bad habits to his co-stars here. Anyways, we always hear the tradition in Universal reusing everything that they get their hands on, right? Here's some things they reused for this movie. They reused the sets from The Invisible Woman and The Mummy's Hand in this film. They reused scenes from The Bride and Ghost of Frankenstein. They reused the score from several movies. Get the list here. Black Friday, Man-Made Monster, The Wolfman, The Ghost of Frankenstein, Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, House of Frankenstein, The Scarlet Claw, and The Invisible Man's Revenge. All of it. And it's just like, my God, like you guys aren't even trying at this point. You guys are just cobbling together random shit. Ridiculous. This film actually did worse than The Picture of Dorian Gray at the box office, but it did better than Isle of the Dead, The Body Snatcher, and Zombies on Broadway. However, you gotta remember those three films that I just mentioned that did better than were all very low budget. So those were considered successes because they weren't made for much. Whereas this movie was probably considered a disappointment, and it was because they put more money into it. Even though it's still very low budget, it didn't make back what they was wanting. It was after this movie came out that they actually would cut a lot of their talent, both in front of and behind the camera. This would include legendary makeup effect artist Jack Pierce and actor Lon Chaney Jr., which at this point his alcoholism was becoming an issue. So they made the decision to get rid of him. The writer of this was a guy named Edward T. Lowe, and this was his last screenplay. He actually would quit after this. I guess it was kind of believed that he was very bitter and fed up with the politics and just the way that Universal kind of treated their employees, that he put little to no effort into the script, he said, and which would make sense considering that the Wolfman and Dracula both just come back to life with no explanation from the previous film. We're back. Yeah. And apparently after he was done with this, he went back to his house and burned every piece of movie memorabilia. None of those words, if I don't try to sound out, I just rambled out. He burned it all, and he was done with Hollywood. So House of Dracula, my thoughts. Overall I liked it, but it's just like, I don't know. It's like they keep kind of trying to promise this battle royal, this monster mash that we never fully get. You get some interaction between the Wolfman and Dracula. You get some interaction with Wolfman and Frankenstein's monster. Whatever, but it's like you never fully get just a triple threat or a battle royal, and that's what I'm wanting. That's what I'm paying to see. I think it's better than House of Frankenstein, which really kind of sucked a lot of dick more than I remember it being. I don't know. It kind of shot in the middle, I guess, after I watched this last time, but I don't know. It's still not as good as I was hoping it'd be. And this kind of falls on par with maybe Frankenstein versus the Wolfman. I think that movie gets a pass just because it's the first time, even though you don't get it till the very end. At least it kind of delivered on it slightly. Here it's just like, I don't know. We get the rematch, I guess, but it's like, You could have done so much more, guys. You could have done so much more. And then the fact that, we could have had Bela Lugosi and Universal just being a dick about that. And then the fact that you can just tell that, like, regardless of the reasons, whether it's the writer just, disenfranchised with his company, or if it's just Universal not putting the hype machine behind us like they used to, and are just churning these out and cutting corners with the sets and the score and, actual scenes. It just, clearly they don't care about the movies anymore. So it's no longer about making a movie. It's just about making a product, and you can tell. So again, not the worst. It's enjoyable for what it is. It just could have been so much better. And that's where I'm falling out with this. This has a 5.7 on IMDb and a 56% Rotten Tomato on Rotten Tomatoes. So, yeah. But there you go. That is the movie of 1945, the winner of the Golden Skull Award. So, just to do a quick recap before we get the hell out of here. Inducted to the Horror Hall of Fame, Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi, and Bram Stoker. And in our top 10, The Man in a Half-Street Moon, Fog Island, Zombies on Broadway, The Vampire's Ghost, Isle of the Dead, Jungle Captive, Dead of Night, and then the winner of the Bronze Skull Award, Strangler of the Swamp, winner of the Silver Skull Award, The Picture of Dorian Gray, and the winner of the Golden Skull Award in the horror film of 1945, House of Dracula. So there you guys have it. Thank you very much for tuning in. My name's Daniel Richardson. This has been the Retro Horror Academy, and you're dismissed.